A 76-year-old woman was just ousted from her 20-year friend group, not over arguments, but because a secret she once shared was posted online by someone else. And that was the last time she confided in anyone. Old age isn't just physical weakness. It's also a heightened vulnerability when trusting the wrong person. There are things we think are harmless, but just tell the wrong person and you'll regret it before you know it. As we get older, memory isn't as clear as it once was. There are details we misremember without realizing. And what's more concerning is what you share might be misunderstood, embellished, or far worse, be exploited. Not everyone is kind enough to keep your confidence, and not every story needs to be retold. A U.S. survey found 38% of older adults feel emotionally distressed from sharing personal matters at the wrong time, with the wrong person. Because as one gets older, the mind tires more easily, and each time old stories are dredged up, it risks tangling one's memory a bit more. Many have unintentionally hurt themselves simply because they trusted others too much with their words. Forgetting their memory isn't what it used to be. So why not choose to keep some things for yourself? A little gentle silence, a few memories only you truly understand, for peace of mind and a calmer heart. In this video, we'll explore 5 reasons to be cautious about sharing your private life in later years, and how to protect your memory, dignity, and peace of mind. If you've ever said something and regretted it, this video is for you. And if you know someone who might need this message, feel free to share this thoughtful video. Perhaps you'll help them hold on to some peace they nearly lost. Let's dive in. A few words spoken to lighten the heart, but share them with the wrong person, and you could become a target of subtle manipulation without realizing. Just a few casual confidences. An elderly woman lost over $2,000. You're not losing your mind, but someone is exploiting your memory to betray your trust. As we grow older, we cherish more those moments of confiding, of true conversation. Sharing personal stories, from tales of children and grandchildren, finances, personal habits to daily emotions, sometimes helps us feel less lonely, less adrift. But this very thing can easily become a double-edged sword when memory is no longer as sharp as before. Older adults often forget what they've told, whom they've spoken to, and the context of their sharing. This makes them prone to repeating personal information to various people, sometimes untrustworthy ones. When that happens, what you share can be exploited, distorted, or used to manipulate your emotions and trust. A report from the U.S. National Institute on Aging states older adults with mild memory impairment are 2.5 times more likely to be scammed via phone or social media. And most cases begin with oversharing personal details. Once private information like addresses, health conditions, finances, or family issues is exposed, outsiders can easily use these details to gain your trust, then steer you towards poor decisions. The story of Helen Sanders, 74, from Scottsdale, Arizona, might resonate. After her husband passed, she often called new acquaintances from an online retiree forum. They chatted cheerfully. She mentioned she was living alone, her children were busy, and even shared that recently she'd often forget to turn off the stove or would go to bed, forgetting to lock the door. Only 2 months later, one of these online friends used that exact information to impersonate the police, calling to demand she transfer money because supposedly her house was not safe. She only realized she'd been scammed after losing over $2,000. Mrs. Helen wasn't a gullible person. She was simply lonely, and her memory no longer sharp enough to discern between friendly sharing and dangerous revelations. So please pause a moment before you share anything further with anyone, especially someone you haven't met in person or only know superficially. Keep things about your health, finances, and personal feelings to yourself, not because you're being overly suspicious, but because you are protecting yourself. Choose one trusted loved one to share everything with, and with other people, only tell what is absolutely necessary. Make a note if you're not sure you've told that particular story. And importantly, practice saying a simple yet essential sentence. I'm not comfortable talking about that. Because when you hold back what ought to be kept private, you don't just protect information. You also save your memory the strain of remembering things. that perhaps shouldn't have been voiced. Telling the wrong person is already dangerous, but getting details wrong can more readily lead to misunderstandings, unfair blame, and even unintentionally hurting loved ones you never meant to. Just one time misremembering a single detail in a story, but it can make you lose people's trust for good. After age 60, the brain doesn't operate as sharply as it did in younger years. This doesn't mean you are no longer clear-headed, but memory, particularly for specific details, begins to grow fragile. A name, a number, a past situation might be reordered in your mind without your awareness. And when you share these recollections, however well-intentioned, you could very likely be recounting them inaccurately. Getting details wrong not only makes listeners doubt you, but also inadvertently puts you in an awkward position. Family might think you're making things up, friends could question your memory, and more dangerously, ill-intentioned individuals might exploit that confusion to manipulate, misguide, or even entrap you. Research from the University of California indicates older adults tend to unconsciously piece together memories when recalling old stories. They aren't inventing things, it's just that their brains automatically fill in the blanks, sometimes with inaccurate fragments. This makes sharing private matters even more perilous if not managed carefully. An older individual was once deceived into signing a paper, thinking it concerned a grandchild's unpaid debt, when in reality it was a deed to transfer their home. Samuel Brooks, 76 of Denver, Colorado, provides a typical example. During one family gathering, he mentioned a relative had borrowed money and hadn't repaid it for 10 years. The story caused a family commotion. But just days later, his daughter found an old financial logbook indicating he had actually gifted the money when that person was in dire straits, not loaned it. He was taken aback, not understanding how he'd recalled it so differently. Although his family didn't blame him, he felt quite sheepish and became more cautious in conversations thereafter. Mr. Brooks's situation is not uncommon. What's significant isn't about who was right or wrong, but rather the disheartening feeling when someone discovers their memory has misled them. For seniors, this deeply affects their confidence, self-respect, and overall emotional well-being. Before you recount an old event, take a moment to ask yourself, am I positive I remember this accurately? If you're not sure, just gently say, I don't remember the specifics clearly, but I believe it was. That doesn't make you look weak. Instead, it helps the people respect your thoughtfulness. Memories might fade, but trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to regain. Aim for each story you share to be an anchor, keeping your memory sound and others' confidence in you complete. For if your recollections lead people to doubt you, then nothing you say afterwards will hold the same influence as before. Misremembering can hurt others, but sharing too much, even when correct, can also hurt yourself. Some people call 5 times a day to get things off their chest. But after a month, their memories start to blur, and they can't remember what made them sad. Past a certain age, many people find themselves frequently overthinking, revisiting old memories, or getting caught up in things long gone. They seek out friends, acquaintances, even strangers online, hoping to share and lighten their emotional load. However, there's something few recognize. The more you tell, the more details you rehash, the more your mind can become agitated, particularly when your memory is already fading. Continually recounting sad events, old hurts, or personal anxieties doesn't just leave you emotionally drained. It also compels your brain to work overtime. Your mind has to sift through the past, try to connect broken memory threads, and attempt to make sense of jumbled feelings, all while an older adult's capacity to process information has diminished with time. A report from the Alzheimer's Association reveals older adults who more frequently emotionally revisit personal stories face a higher risk of developing early memory confusion and sustained mild anxiety. These sharings, meant to be therapeutic, unintentionally transform into sources of internal turmoil. Elaine Morris, 70, of Minneapolis, Minnesota, provides a vivid example. Following her husband's death, she would frequently spend hours talking with friends about their shared past, how they first met, the ups and downs of their marriage, and even things she deeply regretted. At first, she felt listened to and understood, but over time she started suffering from insomnia. forgetting basic appointments, and occasionally misremembering events that had just occurred. Her psychologist advised writing in a journal instead of constantly retelling stories, to give her brain a chance to relax without the stress of interaction. Only a month later, she felt her mind was clearer, she was less anxious, and she slowly began to regain her inner peace. The truth is, an older person's mind can easily become overstretched when recalling memories tied to strong emotions. You don't need to divulge every detail to feel consoled. Sometimes, merely sitting quietly for a few minutes, placing your hand on your heart, and taking deep breaths is sufficient to give your heart and mind a chance to recuperate. Carefully choose what genuinely needs to be voiced. When you feel burdened, consider writing your thoughts down rather than speaking them. And if sharing is necessary, select someone who helps you feel calm, not someone who makes you struggle to articulate yourself. Because sometimes an old story doesn't hurt you until you tell it for the 50th time, not remembering who you told. If you're still with us and finding these insights valuable, how about dropping a 4 in the comments below so I know? And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, perhaps consider hitting that follow button and ringing the notification bell so you don't miss our new videos. Your encouragement truly helps us keep making helpful and inspiring content for you. Sharing to unburden oneself is natural, but if repeated too often, the mind not only grows weary, it also starts to get confused. You remember your first day of school perfectly, yet can't recall if you took your medicine this morning. That isn't merely age, it's your brain getting bogged down by those very past events. Many seniors often enjoy retelling old memories. It's a natural aspect of the aging process. Reminiscing allows us to feel we're still connected to wonderful past years, to people no longer with us, and to the person we once were. However, when you replay these memories too frequently, particularly when your memory is already fading, this seemingly innocuous habit can lead to surprising repercussions. An older adult's brain is like an old library. The more often a book is taken out, the more likely it is to tear, have pages mixed, or lose a section. When you repeat old stories frequently, the brain prioritizes reinforcing those memories, inadvertently pushing new ones off the storage shelf. The result, you vividly recall events from 30 years ago, but can't remember what you had for lunch today or if you took your medication. A Stanford University study revealed people over 65 who frequently revisit memories without helpful direction are twice as likely to encounter short-term memory problems. In other words, they'll remember old events tenaciously but forget new ones fast, a typical sign of early-stage cognitive decline. Dorothy Jensen, 78, from Portland, Oregon, personally experienced this. She often retold stories from her youth, her time as a wartime nurse, when she first met her husband, including many details that moved her listeners. But gradually her family realized she didn't remember she'd already told these stories, would mix up dates, get names wrong, and even forgot her grandson's birthday from just a few days prior. When Dorothy innocently asked her grandson, "Whose birthday is it today?" everyone just froze. She had celebrated his birthday with him only 3 days before. After a doctor's memory assessment, she received a diagnosis of mild short-term memory impairment. Not serious if managed early, but it could progress if lifestyle changes weren't made. This doesn't mean you should never share old stories. Rather, do so with moderation and awareness. Try to balance storytelling with active listening and intersperse old recollections with new activities and experiences. Instead of spending hours just reminiscing, perhaps write a few lines in a notebook, or only share when someone truly wishes to hear, and you also feel genuinely prepared to tell it. Every time you're about to recount a particular memory, quickly ask yourself, when was the last time I told this specific story? If you genuinely can't remember, maybe it's a sign to let your mind rest for a bit. Because if you dwell solely in your memories, you risk unintentionally losing the capacity to form new ones. And memory, much like life itself, needs to be nourished by the present moment, not just by dwelling on the past. And perhaps the most unfortunate part isn't incorrect memories or old stories shared too frequently, but rather one single, unchecked word, uttered without thought, can demolish the trust you've built over a lifetime. A dear friend you love might gradually fade from your life, simply due to one comment you have no recollection of ever saying. As memory starts to decline, one of the initial faculties impacted is the ability to control one's speech. It's not because you're deliberately misspeaking or intending to cause offense, but rather because the brain is no longer as agile as it once was at filtering, considering, and modulating what is said. According to geriatric specialists, a decline in language skills can be an early sign of dementia, often appearing even before significant memory loss. The outcome is that many seniors unintentionally utter remarks that are off-topic, factually incorrect, or make others uneasy without realizing it themselves. Some might share their children's private affairs in front of a crowd. Others might make remarks about someone, forgetting that person is sitting close by. Still others might accidentally voice criticisms because they're mixing up old memories with current reality. And when such incidents occur, the outcome is not merely an awkward pause in conversation, it's a relationship that could be seriously damaged. According to a U.S. survey by AARP, American Association of Retired Persons, over 40% of older adults stated they'd been misunderstood or had family lose trust in them because of a verbal misstep when their memory was fuzzy. The unfortunate part is, following these experiences, they frequently opt for silence and withdrawal, a response that regrettably exacerbates memory decline due to insufficient social engagement. Ruth Carpenter, 73 of Tampa, Florida, used to be very outgoing and amiable. However, after a family gathering, she inadvertently recounted a private matter concerning her daughter to a distant relative, completely oblivious that this action caused significant pain to her daughter's immediate family. They didn't reproach her severely, but they did create some distance. Ruth subsequently became more reserved, often feeling anxious whenever she considered contributing to a conversation. And it was at this point that her doctor identified early indicators of cognitive impairment. But the key point is, nobody is born with perfect communication skills, particularly when the brain is gradually losing its edge. What we can indeed do is acknowledge our own limitations and learn to better control the rhythm and substance of our speech, exercising caution and cultivating self-understanding. Before speaking about something significant, take a brief pause. Ask yourself, is this something that needs to be said? How can I phrase it most kindly? And if you're not entirely sure you remember it right, be open and say, I'm not absolutely positive. I could be misremembering. That kind of honesty helps protect trust and makes listeners feel respected. Because sometimes preserving trust isn't about the volume of words, but rather knowing when silence is golden and when to speak with genuine kindness from the heart. Perhaps you no longer clearly recall who once hurt you, but you deserve to remember clearly who truly listened to you right to the very end. Because your memory is no longer as keen as it once was, every retelling can be a fresh stumble, every explanation an added burden. And not everyone possesses the compassion to understand accurately, maintain discretion, and truly honor the narrative you carry. Cherishing the memories you choose to keep, it's not about being afraid of life, but because you've lived enough to understand not every single story needs to be shared, and not every person needs to know all you've been through. Sometimes silence is our way of being kind to our memory. It is that quiet interlude for the mind to recuperate, that personal space to listen again to our own heart, free from fear of judgment, misrepresentation, or being wounded by others. If today you've realized there are some stories that don't need to be told again, some details that don't warrant a third repetition, then you're already nurturing your memory in the kindest way. And if this video makes you think of someone specific, perhaps someone who tends to talk a lot, simply because they're afraid of forgetting, maybe gently share this video with them. Because someday when memories grow dim, what they might need most is a person who understands that silence too can be a form of love. Thanks for staying with us until the very end. May you sleep well, with gentle memories and a heart that no longer feels the need to explain.